In this video, we're going to take a look at using inputs along with what we've learned about classes and with simple events. But if we have some simple input fields, how do we go about capturing their information? So getting a basic document started here, so I use the HTML5 template. Now what I'm going to do is have a paragraph. In that paragraph, we will give it an ID of P1 and then the text for this. We're going to ask for a person, and then we're going to, in this paragraph, because this allows us to effectively have a label next to our input field, I will add an input, and the input will be text, and the input is going to then have an ID. All of our inputs will have specific IDs so we can find them, because we need to gain access to their content. And then what's useful is we can also have a placeholder. The placeholder will be kind of gray text that shows up inside the input field. This is useful, but you really need to have text outside of it, because if you just only put the information as the placeholder, the moment you start typing, the placeholder goes away, and then you're left wondering, wait, what am I supposed to type in this field? I don't know. So I'm just going to put person there. So that now gives me an input. Then I'm going to have a button, and this button, we'll give it an ID equals submit, and then put in submit. And now I'm going to have another paragraph. I'm just going to call it results, ID equals, inside double quotes, P2. Now, something else that I'm going to want is some style information. So in the style, display block, and then we go dot display none, display none. So that gives me the two that I'll be working with there. Save our page here. Let's go live and see what it looks like. And there is our page. Now let's pull up our console and our elements. We can work with it so we can see here's our elements. And I do have a few options. One, I can make this hide right now, or I could use JavaScript to make it hide. Both work. None like this. Now let's go back to our page and take a look, and we can see it went away. So we're off and running. This gives us a good first start. Now it's time to work on our JavaScript. This is where the fun is going to be. So let P1, it's going to be equal to document.querySelector. Q and A are right by each other, and when I went to hit the Q, I hit the A instead. QuerySelector, hashtag P1, let P2 equal to document.querySelector, quote, hashtag P2. And then we need let input person be equal to document query selector, and this would be input person, and finally submit equal to document query selector submit. So that now takes care of accessing all the elements on our page that we need to be able to access. I don't need to access the H1, so we don't need to do anything with that. So what we can do with this is go submit dot add event listener, and we'll be looking for click, if I can type it correctly, submit button handler or BH, and false. So remembering we did it before, and now function submit BH, couple parentheses, some curly braces. Now we get to have some fun with this. So what we're going to do when we do this, save our page. I don't see any red showing up on the bottom over here, so then that's good. We don't have any errors appearing in the console, and I don't need the what's new part. So we can see the console, we're good. So it is nice leaving that little edge of the window open. So if I type something here and there's an error, I'll see it show up red on the side. So that's a handy feature to think about with this. So what I want to have happen is once someone inputs some information, I want to then change the contents of my results paragraph, or P2, and also remove the display none class on it. So we'll set it back to display block. So we have a couple of different things that we are working with here. So one, we can just bring it back when I click on the button. So now I can say P2 dot class name is going to be equal to display block. Okay, save that, no errors, and hit submit, it comes back. All right, good. Now, as it's coming back, or even before it comes back, it'll happen so quick it doesn't really matter the sequence and what we do with that. I could even make paragraph 1 go away. I could make the button go away, and then it'd be nice to have a reset button, but those are nice features that you can add later. The first part is let's just work with the input information. So I want to take P2 and set its text content, so the text that's in that paragraph, and I want to change it. And we can do that simply right now, even without worrying about the input. So if I just say this is new text, save it, go here, submit, we can see how it updated it. So now that paragraph has been changed because its original content said the results. We can see that over here under elements, and now it says this is new text. So let's go back over into Visual Studio Code and instead say your mortal enemy is, and now put a space and our quote. Now we can put a plus, and then what we are going to do is we're going to grab the value. So I will say input person.value. And what that does is that grabs the contents of that input field. Save, let's try again, go back over here, and now if I type a person in and I will say Scooby, and your mortal enemy is Scooby. So we can see how it's now able to update that. Going back into Visual Studio Code, if If I want a period at the end of that, I can now add another plus sign, add a quote, and put a period. Save that, take a look here, and go Fred. Click, and we can see now it completes our sentence. If I want to add more to it, I can go p2.text content plus equals, and what this will do is it will leave what's there and add to it. And now I'll put a quote and a space because I want it to now continue after that period, so I'll put a space here. Your best friend used to be space and quote plus input person dot value, and then do a plus quote period. All right, now let's save that and see how it goes. And now this time put in Daphne, hit that, mortal enemy is Daphne, your best friend used to be Daphne. So you see how we can keep adding and adding. So if we had multiple inputs, we could be adding them and writing out a short story. So using the classes that we looked at before, using the event listeners that we used before, this time we're now grabbing the value from the input that we have put on screen. What I'm also going to do is just show how we could go p1 dot class name is going to be equal to display none. So let's save this, go back here, and we can see the placeholder showing up, but the moment I start typing it goes away. And I'll type in a name, hit submit, and now we can see how that went away. Now it didn't get rid of submit because that was outside P1. What would be nice is if we had a containing element. So if we had an element, say like a div here, and then that div ID is equal to input panel, and let's move the closed div down to the end of that. Return, tab that over. Now, as I want to move these over, we can move items over using Command or Control and the square bracket keys, so that adjusts for indents, so that just cleans it up, making it look a little bit better. And what we also will want to do is, once again, we just need to let input panel be equal to document query selector and input panel. And now this time, instead of setting P1 display none, let's go input panel. Now let's save that, see how we're doing here. It still looks the same. And now I go here and we can see it cleans it up. We don't have a reset button, so we can do it again, but that would be something that you could add as you improve the overall functionality of your project. So once again, I just simply used a structural element like a div. I could use a section tag as well. Both would be perfectly appropriate in this context, because the input panel div, this isn't a content element, so that's a perfect use for a div because it's a structural element just to group things together so I can access them through CSS or JavaScript. So it would make sense to do it that way. And once again, we're just changing the text content. We can do an initial assignment, and if we want to keep writing our story, we use plus equals, so that keeps adding to what's there. The same way when we use it for counting on things, we do plus equals and it adds to it. So if we have, say, the score in a game or something along those lines. So we can do it with text and we can do it with numbers. All right, good luck. and have fun.